Hey guys, we're live. Hello, hello.
Hi.
We're here with the absolutely lovely and super talented Becca Clason, and welcome to the Design Cuts Hangout, Becca. It's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Yeah, so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It should be a fun one, guys. I hope you've got your questions at the ready. I'm here with Matt, our creative director, who many of you should know. And we've definitely come armed with a bunch of questions. So do use the Ask a Question functionality. If you see that just below the video, get your questions in there. We're going to pick Becca's brain on all kinds of stuff and appreciate her being with us. Hey, Deborah, just let us know if you can see and hear us okay in the chat. That's always a good start. Hey, Heather. By the way, Becca, often there's like a little delay on the comments.
Okay.
So I always say to guests, if you make a hilarious joke and it's like crickets, it's not that you're not funny. Wait 5 seconds and then you'll see a reaction kick in. Or in my case, just no reaction because my jokes are...
Tumbleweed goes across them.
Exactly. So Becca, for the minute number of people with us today who might not be familiar with you and your work, would you mind kind of introducing yourself and what you're involved in? Because there's a lot. You've got your fingers in a lot of pies, it seems.
It's been a busy year. So yeah, I'm Becca Clason, live in Salt Lake City, Utah, or just outside Salt Lake City. I'm a tactile lettering artist and stop motion animator. I create stop motion videos for brands and ad agencies, typically involving lettering created out of food or, all kinds of physical objects. And I also am the creator of LetterWest, which started out as a retreat a couple of years ago. We did 2 years of retreats, and this was the first year. Back in June, we did a full conference. And and my studio is called So Mighty Studio. We recently renamed and launched. My husband Josh is my partner there, and we also worked on this year a pop-up exhibit called Love Letters, and it's in Salt Lake City, running through the summer. It uses a lot of talent and murals and artwork from various local artists, and some international ones like Stefan Kuhn's also has some thing in there, and Craig Winslow, who lives in Portland. And so yeah, a mix of local and non-local artists doing that. And it's kind of like for people who love books and letters and words and alphabet and all that sort of thing. So that's kind of
everything lettering.
Pardon?
Everything lettering, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I've just seen Deborah in the chat said, busy lady. I think that would be a fair summary, right? Are you just one of these people who loves being busy and you find a way to fill your time if there is any spare time?
Yeah, it's kind of I feel like you kind of get addicted to being busy. So I'm also trying to not be so busy all the time because it's been a little bit stressful this year. But I recently got back from a vacation with my husband and son, and so that was nice to kind of chill out for a little bit. But yeah, I'm also pregnant, so that's another thing adding to my plate. So
so you got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying to you before we went live, I've heard such, everyone's saying congrats, by the way, in the chat. I've heard such consistently good things, not just about you and your work, but about LetterWest. And we mentioned how we've been to Creative South, and we were huge fans there of the whole ethos, the family feel. So much fun, right, Matt?
Yeah.
And I've heard very similar things about LetterWest. So in a world where I think conferences can be quite dry, maybe, it seemed to have such a close-knit personal feel. Everyone seemed to have a blast. And it's definitely one that's very high on our list that we want to check out.
Well,
so
yeah.
how was that deliberate? Did you sit down and you planned it out and you're like, what kind of, vibe are we going for with this thing?
That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, so when I decided only the beginning of December, end of November last year to do the conference. So I kind of had to pack all the planning in about 6 months. And it, in doing LetterWest the whole time, it's been like, well, what's something that I want to exist? And then I want to create what I wish existed. Yeah. And so, yeah, having that, the feeling and the vibe of community over competition, and also a close-knit thing, the intimacy of the small retreats. That's something I really wanted to create and give people the opportunity to hang out with some of their lettering idols and learn from them and be one of like 40 people there eating meals with them, but also taking a workshop from them and getting to know them as people. And that's like a different opportunity than just going to a conference and listening to someone speak, but not having the opportunity to sort of become friendly with them. And so creating the conference this year, I wanted to somehow keep that vibe and that feeling, even though there were going to be a lot more people. And
how many people went this year, Becca?
To the conference? There were over 200 attendees, and there were 17 speakers, panelists, and workshop instructors.
But still pretty intimate though, you know, where you could more or less meet everyone if you put the groundwork in.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the size of Adobe Max by far.
What is that? That's like 16,000 or something, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
huge.
I think there must be like a maximum size though, where you kind of start to lose the intimacy. I know Creative South's going to be even bigger next year, and I just wonder if it'll keep that, you know, to keep that lovely friendly feel. I hope it doesn't get too big.
Right, and I think that's something I definitely want to keep. And moving into the conference, it was something I was thinking about a lot, like how is this going to work? Like, are people still going to have that intimate sort of feel, even though it's a conference with more people, even though it's a small conference still and like an intimate conference? And I think it was pretty successful at that. I think I tried to create opportunities for people to hang out together. And some of the feedback I received from speakers, that they really loved the event, and like it was one of their favorite conferences that they'd had the opportunity to speak at, because it gave a unique opportunity where attendees in the various like events that were going on throughout the conference. And so I was really glad to hear that, and hope to be able to continue that vibe and that feel.
Excellent.
I love it.
Yeah,
what do you reckon, Matt? Sold?
Yeah, sold. It just makes me want to run something in the UK, you know, it's just awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of conferences that are catered towards the design community, and so there are some lettering people who speak or who attend, but there's also a lot of other like focuses like graphic design or UI UX, or, you know, like all sorts of like the broad things under design, which lettering kind of falls into. But it's sort of a risk to focus on a lettering specific conference, just because there's not as much opportunity to grow it or expand it, because it's a smaller niche community. But I think that is one of the benefits of it, is keeping it within your specific community.
I think most designers just love lettering and geek out over it though. It's just so popular, so popular.
Yeah, it's maybe not that small a niche anymore. I was going to say, like, as a niche or a trend or whatever we call it, it's I think it's never been more popular. There seem to be so many letterers out there, but there is definitely something special.
Really flourishing, I'd say.
Yeah, hugely. So I love being in those rare circles where everyone is like-minded and everyone has that shared passion. It's such a rare thing, because no one in my life, my family and friends, like, they don't really get what I do, and they're supportive, but they don't care about it, not like the way I do. So when you're there, like having drinks with people and getting so geeky,
geek out about branding or lettering or design or UX, and people go, "Oh, I'm actually into it." You know.
Yeah, and if anyone else eavesdrops, it would just be the nerdiest conversation ever. But for you, it's fantastic. So,
I think it's like to give the people the opportunity to connect with people that they're friends with online. Like Good Type and Lauren Hom have created like really great communities online of people who love lettering. Like Lauren with her weekly homework thing. Like there are people who start following each other because they also are posting the weekly homework, and then they sort of become friends with each other. And same with Good Type. And there are these like communities that are created. People who love lettering, like follow more people who love lettering, and you know, not just like industry leaders, but people who are like learning it as they go and trying to do these like self-initiated projects and that sort of thing. And so LetterWest, I think, gives people that opportunity to meet in person, not just industry leaders, but their peers and the community and the people that they follow and talk with on Instagram.
Makes sense. Can I ask, is Stefan Koons, I've talked to him quite a few times, but only like this, is he as smooth in real life? It's a pretty smooth character, isn't he?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, he's great.
So, I mean, speaking of like lettering being a bit of a niche and this being more of a niche conference, if you will, how do you feel about niching? Because this is something, it seems like a real big topic at the minute. We just talked about it on the Honest Designers show. Do you feel like, you know, is it too narrow? Should people be scared to commit to being a letterer instead of a broader creative or designer? Or do you feel like there's a lot of opportunity there still?
I think there's a lot of opportunity there still. And I think that if you have a niche, like in my client work, I'm like even more of like a sub niche, I guess, because it's in lettering, but it's like tactile lettering is what I focus on. And so that's like even less broad than just all-encompassing lettering. And so I've chosen something like very specific to focus on, and that's been beneficial for me because not as many people do it. And so if brands and clients are looking for that specific thing, you know, they look at the few people who do it. And so it's been better for me professionally to dive into a specific niche. When I was doing more broad stuff, I wasn't, you know, I was a little frustrated because I was like, why am I not getting hired for certain things that other people are? Or why is my career not going like the way that I want it to? And once I kind of focused in and narrowed in on like a niche I wanted to really get into, that's when things started picking up for me.
Did I see that you'd had kind of was your initial break with quite a big brand, I think I'd seen, in terms of, was the initial break with kind of a big brand that I'd seen? So that, I guess, did that help in terms of sort of rolling off the back of that big brand into more big brands?
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps get the ball rolling. So Larabar, which is owned by General Mills, that was like the first tactile lettering job that I was hired for. I had done some things with other brands in like digital lettering type of thing, but this was the first like tactile one that I was hired for. And that one kind of came about because of a mixture of things. Like I had been focusing on this and trying to do something every day or nearly every day, posted online just to try to build my portfolio in that genre, but also to try to get my work noticed by people and have like creative directors or brands think like, oh, I could see my product working in this specific instance. Maybe we could work with this person. So I had created a couple of projects that were using things like products that I really loved, and Larabar was one of those. And so just as a personal project, I did some food lettering with one of the Larabar flavors, and then I posted it online, Twitter and Instagram. I don't use Twitter anymore, but at the time I did a little bit. So Twitter and Instagram, I tagged Larabar, and sort of around the same time, a friend of mine who was working for General Mills, not with the Larabar team, he met with them for something, and he was like, oh, you guys should, you know, check out the work of my friend, Becca Clason. Like, she's doing like this food lettering stuff. You guys should work with her. So if two of those things hadn't happened together, like I may not have gotten hired by them, but since things happened, they saw my work and they're like, oh, that's the person. So then they hired me to create a few more things for them. And then
I love that.
It's fortuitous, amazing.
Yeah. Well, I just think by putting yourself out there and putting your work out there, albeit through a personal project, you increase the chances of serendipity.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. You can't be a hermit. So you made it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to be creating the work that you want to create. So if you don't if you're not posting work on your portfolio or on Instagram of like book covers or whatever, people aren't going to hire you for book covers. So you need to be like mocking those up yourself and doing them by yourself so people can see how you would do in that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip to any designers who are starting out and they're trying to get creative directors or agencies or get a job, is to mock that work up, right? Mock those brand projects up to make it look like you're already doing that kind of work, because then it's not difficult to imagine that you can do it because you can see someone doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Lauren Hahn in her talk at LetterWest, she mentioned, I think her talk was focused on like how to stand out in a sea of Instagram. Yeah. And one of the tips, and I sort of like peeked around at like all of the talks. It's hard to focus on like as the person like in charge of LetterWest. It's like I can't just sit in on one thing for the whole time. So I was kind of like moving about the whole time. But I was in there for part of Lauren's talk where she talked about how it's important to mock up your work. Like, sure, you can design something that you want to create as like a postcard or a greeting card or whatever, but if you just post the digital artwork on Instagram, it's like not as impactful. But if you mock it as it would actually,
people can't make that mental jump, can they, to actually think, well, that's what it's actually going to look like in the final application.
Exactly. And so what I love is I've been seeing people who attended LetterWest taking some of these things that they learned from the speakers to heart. So Chie Tamata, she recently posted something that like sort of referenced this thing that Lauren mentioned. She had created these things that she wanted to be produced, and she mocked them up, and she explained sort of in her caption, like, I mocked these up because I heard Lauren talking about that at LetterWest, and just made me really happy. Like, people are actually like learning something from these talks and taking them to heart.
Impact, right?
Great.
It's real impact.
Yeah, teaching is great, isn't it?
That's so cool. I think it might be that time, Becca. Are you happy to share your Instagram? Because for anyone that hasn't seen your work, while you bring it up here, I'm going to say the two things I get when I look at your feed. It makes me smile, and a lot of it makes me hungry.
It does, yeah. It made me smile a lot as well. It's really great. It's really great to see such like, a creative way to show different brands. It's beautiful. I love it.
It's amazing, like incredible quality of work, but it's just it's so fun. Like so many of your stop motion videos, I just love
coming through.
How did you put it together?
Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, should I share it right now?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, please.
Let's see if I remember how to do this. Okay. Share screen. Okay, here we go.
Okay,
cool.
Okay, is it shared? Are we good?
It is. We're there. Okay. So I know you said tactile lettering, and I know you do all kinds of stuff. I've seen stuff with like giant car tires and all different materials, but it does seem to lean towards food. Would you say that's like food lettering is your biggest love in terms of the tactile stuff?
Not really my biggest love. It started out as, it was just like so much more easy and like handy. Like food is just all around, and it's like something that I was easily able to reach out to brands that were food brands and say like, hey, could I work with you? Like, are you interested in something like this? I think it has been leaning more in the past like year or two away from food. There's still like food things that come up, but I've been doing a lot more that aren't food. And let's see, it seems like it's not pulling up. Is it pulling up for you guys?
It's not yet. It might just be the internet getting hammered by the fact we're live streaming. So
I might not be able to show any of the animations, but I can scroll through and sort of show like some of the thumbnails from those, I guess.
Yeah,
I
love the Drunken Lettering one. It's so cool.
I love that. It's brilliant, isn't it?
So this one I created. Awesome. I was actually on Drunken Lettering a couple years ago, and I created this for that. Oh, maybe it'll let me. Cool. And I reused it for a recent animation a recent interview that I did. So this one was more time lapse than stop motion, and then I incorporated some digital lettering as well, which I'm not pro at, but I'm learning a little bit of. I took an online lettering animation course by Austin Saylor. He's really great at digital lettering animation, and so I learned a couple things there. So
really, really cool.
I'll play this Mott's one. I think that one's pretty fun. From far away, it doesn't really look like sliced apples, but they're all sliced apples.
Let's have a look. So this was for a client, yeah?
Yeah, this was for Mott's.
Okay, that's so cool.
Really
so all of that is food?
Yeah, I mean, the white lettering is digital. Everything else is actual apples. Oh,
That's
and the bottle is digitally rendered in as well, just because the sizes didn't quite match up with the perspectives. So let's see, let's find one that's not food that I can play. So as a countdown from the new year, this was just sort of for fun because I wanted to create some shorter animations that were a little more GIF-like. So I kind of chose several of my favorite things that year and did like a countdown to 2019 with those.
That's awesome. What is it about stop motion? Because I love it as well, but I would say I love the outcome more than the process. Because if I tried to do that, I would get so confused so quickly.
It just makes you smile, doesn't it? It's just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of just like a magic trick, and I think that's why it's so interesting to look at. But I'm definitely with you. Like, I love the final thing more than the process. People always say like, enjoy the process, and I'm like, for me, I can do the process, but I love the outcome a lot more.
I just love the way you can like bring inanimate objects to life and give them life.
Yeah, exactly. It's like by moving things little by little, it's just like creating motion and movement, and you stream it all together, and it just.
So, did you guys have did you have Amazon as a client there?
Yeah, so we worked with, it was Amazon Prime and Xfinity, and we did 3 videos for them. So we made all of the letters practically. We cut the letters out of fabric and created them in multiple sizes so that they could be shrinking out of the remote control. And then we cut out like some foam core letters for the word show me.
That's so awesome.
I had a sneaky look at the client list on your website, and it's
oh, nice.
Pretty impressive. it must be nice to be able to look at your client list on your site and think, yep, there we go.
Oh, this one has some sound with it.
Oh, no, that's cool. Let's have a look. Oh, yeah, I saw this one.
So, I mean, each animation like takes some different tactics, techniques, and tricks to like make it happen. Like that one, having it all be covered with the fake snow was a challenge. So I had like a bunch of foam set up next to the bottle to make it higher so that I could put the snow all on the same plane so that it would cover the bottle. And so that's something you don't really notice like when it's playing, but that you have to do behind the scenes. So this one was a larger scale one, just a self-promotional. So that was like one of the larger pieces that we've done. And that was kind of fun to get like large scale. It was kind of windy that day, so we had to like rig up a high camera. We were going to do it with a drone, but we were close to an airport. And it wouldn't fly.
Yeah, I don't like that too much.
Had to get creative. I think I have some more. Oh, sorry, were you saying?
Yeah, you mentioned it's you and your husband. Is it just the 2 of you in your agency, or do you have a team now?
So we have a small team. Let's see, I'll just play this one in a second. So my husband's son, Matt, has been working with us for a couple of years now, and he does our editing, most of our video editing, and helps with a lot of our fabrication and just some other things that we need. And a friend of mine, Julie, was working with us as well for a while with like assisting and some sort of like the prop setup and things like that. She's not with us right now. She had to leave us, sadly. We haven't replaced her yet. But so now it's just 3 of us at the studio.
I guess it's still nice just to be not getting your hands dirty, but still actually doing the tactile work and not stepping back and sort of creative directing as such, but kind of actually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are benefits of both. But yeah, I love actually creating, but then I love also like having someone assisting, like, okay, can you start laying this out, and then I'll like tweak it and
It seems like you've got the best of both worlds, really, because
it sound like I kind of miss the design work myself sometimes, you know, actually doing it. Yeah,
being a creative director.
Design work, definitely.
I mean, one of the reasons I asked that, Becca, is just the production value seems very, very high.
Yes.
I would say equal to teams of 10 or 20 people that have been going a lot of years. And it just seems to have such like commercial viability and such production value. I was like, wow, like you hiding away this secret team making you do this?
I totally agree. I looked at the team page on your website and there's like 3 people on it. And I was like, wow.
Super impressive.
I think it's just like the longer we've done this, like I've been doing stop motion now for 4 years, I think. And so some of the earlier stuff, like the quality isn't great and it just has gotten better over time. I think I like in terms of like the color editing and also the quality of the lettering, like, should I stop sharing or do you want me to keep sharing?
It's completely up to you. To be honest, I love being able to look at some of it. We can see you down the bottom. I hope it's not too disconcerting that you can't see us.
I'll just play some of the non-sound ones while I talk.
Sure thing.
So, what was I saying?
The quality's got a lot better.
Like the quality of it. That's just something that I can see and notice, I guess, and that's something that I care a lot about. And so I will, in sort of the creative director role of like the editing portion of it, I try to help it get like the correct like colors and also like I'm pretty perfectionist when it comes to like the laying out of the letters and the animations themselves. Like I'll take, several hours and lay out the lettering, and then I'll take an hour or 2 more and like tweak it to get it so that the lines feel even tighter and just right. And I think that that's a tedium that not a lot of people want to deal with. And and it just works for me. It's like
you kind of reverse engineer it and lay it out all first and then like track it back, and how does the process work?
Typically, so there's one here, and maybe I'll go over to my So Mighty page because I have some more animations there. I can't remember if the one I'm thinking of is on there or on here. It might be on that one.
By the way, guys, we've started doing this on some of these weekly calls, but in the chat, leave an emoji comment with your reaction to Becca's work so far, because it's always fun to see what emojis pop up.
So this one, for example, and this might have some music, so I'll explain a little bit ahead of time. So this one we did for American Eagle's Airy brand, and we used, it was sort of like a summery lake feel. So we used tons and tons of kinetic sand to make it look like real sand, because kinetic sand we could actually mold, and I could keep it that way and not have to have the same thing wet. So is there some feedback here, or is it okay?
There is. Have you got the Hangout open on 2 tabs by any chance?
No.
Okay. I think it might be back to normal now.
Okay.
Sounds fine this end.
Great. Yeah. So this one though, like for scenes that have two pieces of lettering, or lettering in two different times, I have to get a little bit more creative, because I can start one where I create all the lettering first and then animate it backwards, but then it has to go into like another thing of lettering. And so then I'll play it and then I'll explain sort of how I did it.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we're not the only ones wondering, I'm sure, like, how do you do that?
So this one. Okay, so it starts off with like the heart made out of swimsuits and the rainbow color, and as those move away, there's the lettering that's created. This sort of will show the time lapse of that, but on part of the time lapse, I reversed some of the time lapse so it plays in the order that the video plays, just so people can make that connection a little more. But I have to, when I do it this way, I often have to cut the video, let's see, the photos that I take for the stop motion, I often edit them in reverse. So I'll create the lettering first and then animate it. But then the lettering that I have to create forwards, if I have like a secondary piece of lettering or something that's not really able to be animated backwards, like taken away, then I'll have to kind of use those clips forwards and kind of make a little bit more editing. Maybe I have to hide a few more things with masks and things like that.
Becca, just wondering, do you do like a storyboard? You know how when people plan a movie, they will literally sketch out each stage. Do you do that in sketch form and then go and do the real thing, or you just kind of jump in?
I do, yeah. And at the very beginning, a few years ago, when I started doing this, I didn't do storyboards, and then it became a lot more helpful both for me and for the clients. I
guess the big thing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they know what to expect, and also if I get approval on something and then I make it that way, and then they, aren't happy with it, then I say, well, you approved this, you knew that that's how it was going to be, and then I have a little bit more leverage, I guess, in discussing that. Whereas if I didn't spell it all out ahead of time, then it's sort of on me. It's sort of my fault.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So Becca, feel free. Were you going to share your agency page actually?
Oh yeah. I'm actually on there right now. So I'm on the So Mighty Instagram page, which is where we've started posting more of our client.
Cool. Okay.
And this was the time lapse for that sand one that I just played. So you can kind of see me doing some magic here. So this is actually played in reverse. You show me, you can see me taking it away now.
That's so cool with the clothes that make up the wave.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I think the time lapses are fun because people really like them because they get a feel of how it was created. So this one was another one of the Amazon Prime Xfinity ones. So we had to create letters that looked like metal. So Josh and Matt fabricated these letters using the vectors that the agency sent to us. They created them out of foam and then painted them. I think Matt painted them.
That did look very metallic.
They do. Yeah. Must be just great fun making all this stuff.
It is, yeah. I feel like every day is something sort of different. We also had to fabricate the background to look like the rusty interrogation table that happens in that they use in Jack Ryan. So it started out with just like a shiny metal tabletop board, and Josh and Matt rusted it up and kind of made it look more like that.
That's awesome. Nadia just said in the comments, "You're such an inspiration. Love it." Getting a lot of positive emojis as well. I mean, one of my questions before we jumped on, Becca, this seems like one of those jobs where you're growing up as a kid and you hear that people get like chocolate taster as a job. It seems like too fun and too good to be true. And I'm sure there is a huge amount of hard work behind the scenes, but what would you say for someone who wanted to pursue something that seemed almost so good it's too good to be true? How do you break into something like this?
I think for me, it started out with doing still images, tactile lettering still images, and then kind of morphed into stop motion, sort of because a client just decided, like, actually, can we do these stills in stop motion format? And So I told them yes, but then I had to figure out how to make stop motion videos. So I made it happen for that first one, and then I really loved it. The process was really tedious and difficult and sweaty and whatever, but the end result was just sort of magical, and I loved that end result. So I just kept doing it.
Breaks come from that, don't they? Come from saying, well, yeah, of course I can do it. Yeah, that'll be no problem at all. And then going away, going, oh, and then working back to do it and
figuring out.
Yeah, you just figure it out. Yeah. And that's kind of been how it is along the way. Like some of these things that we have created, like we didn't know exactly how we were going to do it, and it took trial and error before we got it right. Like this one for Nordstrom that I'm about to play, we had to create like a mount. Well, we didn't have to. We chose, like, this was like, we proposed the concept and the idea. So we decided like we were gonna create like this mountain wintry scene in the background, and sort of have this product like float down from the sky and come into the box. And then we had to figure out how we were gonna make that happen. So.
Is there like a favorite project that you've worked on, or something where you like sit back and think, oh, that was awesome, or is this it?
I'm really happy with how this turned out. The lettering, like the ribbon lettering that happens at the end of this video that I'll play, it was really like physically hard because we had to be on a really large canvas. We had like a seamless paper like rolled out on the floor just because like the scene here is so wide, and then we had to cut to overhead, and so it's really big. So I wasn't doing it on a table, which is a little more comfortable. I was like kneeling down on the floor, like laying down, kneeling down, sort of all day to get the ribbon lettering just right, and my knees and back like were hurting so badly, and I was like, I can't keep doing this, like I'm gonna die. But I made it through, and then, you know, finished it, and the video came out beautifully, I thought. So it made it all worth it.
Yeah, let's have a look. And that's so cool with the ribbon.
Oh, that's great, isn't it?
Nice. I love the framing.
Yeah,
that's really so cool. I saw one of the comments on that video, Becca. How long does it take you to do something like this?
So this one, I think this one took us 2 days to shoot. We shot like the mountain and present scene one day, and then had to lay out, then I laid out the ribbon lettering the next day, and we shot that. And it takes a lot less time usually to shoot the lettering than it does to lay out the lettering. So if I were doing stop motion that didn't involve tactile lettering, I think it would take me less time. But I think, I mean, I didn't keep track of this one exactly, but I was probably working on the lettering for 5 or 6 hours maybe. And I had done like, worked on like the sketch in like iPad Pro, Procreate. Like I did the sketch of the letters ahead of time, and then did like the physical like stuff out of ribbon for like 5 or 6 hours another day. So yeah, and
patience.
So yeah,
have the patience, I'm guessing.
Hands and knees. But I typically use drag and frame when shooting stop motion, and that's an amazing stop motion application or program. And it gives you the opportunity to load in an image. So I typically do my sketch ahead of time and lay out my lettering or my framing and all of that. And then I overlay that image into drag and frame at a really low opacity. So as I look on my monitor that's connected to my camera, I can see like where I need to place things to make the lettering like match up to my sketch.
Yeah.
So if there was kind of a toe in the water to get into this kind of thing, what would someone have to do to kind of just have a first go? What kind of equipment would they need? If they've looked at this and thought, oh wow, you know, I want to just want to have a go at this.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible to do it with like just an iPhone. If you're wanting to do still images, you can use just an iPhone, or you could even use it for stop motion. If you have like a rig set up where the phone is going to be stationary and you can, you know, take a picture in the same place.
And there's apps as well, I think, where it pieces together the pictures for you in app on an iPhone.
Oh yeah, I haven't ever used one of those apps, but I think like LifeLapse app, I think, is one that does some stop motion. And yeah, I mean, so I think it's possible to do something like that if you rig something up. I think really key in a professional looking stop motion video is making your photo taken from the same spot every time, like a solid mount.
Right.
Where it's not like wiggling around. But moving on from that, like a DSLR with a remote where you can sort of manually take the pictures away from touching the camera, because that will wiggle it too.
It's good tip.
My setup is like, I have an overhead pipe that kind of runs across the ceiling, and then my camera is constantly. Pardon?
I think I've seen a picture of that somewhere online. It looked pretty cool.
Yeah, probably. Awesome. And then I have cords running down from that to both like plug into like power supply and also to the computer, so that I can use the computer as a monitor. Since the camera's up so high, I can't see in the viewfinder, and using the camera as a monitor is really helpful. And then I can also use drag and frame on that computer as well. So that's kind of my setup. And then as far as lighting goes, if you're gonna do still image, natural light works, but if you are doing stop motion, you'll get a lot of flicker once you stream the photos all together, if you use natural light. So I use like blackout curtains when I'm shooting, and then I use artificial light. But I use continuous light. I don't use strobe lighting. Some people who do stop motion do the strobe, but I've always used continuous light. So that's what I'm familiar with.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really good tips.
Yeah,
so I did write a few tips from the start of this chat, Becca, just to kind of reiterate them for people. And if there's anything where you feel like there's some golden nuggets you picked up from your career, I'd love if you could add to that list. But right here, I've got that niching down can be a very good thing. And I think Becca's a fantastic example of that to the extreme. It's not just lettering, it's tactile lettering, it's food lettering, it's combined with stop motion animation. So the same as when we had James Lewis on this Hangout. And do you know James Lewis, Becca?
Yeah, I know his work.
Yeah, right. So he's super niche because he's got sign painting in a very specific 3D style. You know, there's hardly anyone doing that. So I think in a similar way, you've kind of combined stop motion, tactile lettering, and carved out such an original niche that whenever anyone mentions this kind of work, there's no one that I would think to recommend ahead of you, because I'm like, well, obviously, Becca, you know, if you want that kind of work, and I'm sure that's how you probably get a lot of your clients, is through those recommendations where you're the default option in someone's mind for this particular style. You're kind of owning that space.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few people who do it, but I try to be really legible in my work and really professional in the quality that I put out. Like I don't like presume that I'm like the only one doing this type of thing, and so they'll like automatically come to me. But if there are other people to choose from, I want to be like the best option that people can see, or and that's what I like aim for and hope for.
Is it like a movement, would you say, where you take inspiration from other people doing similar things, and then you add to that inspiration and you move it forward in sort of the classical art and design kind of sense, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I haven't heard that before, but yeah, I like that.
I know as well you touched on putting out the kind of work that you want to be hired for. And that is something I think Lauren Holm actually mentioned on the show. She mentioned that, a bunch of other people have. For me, it's such a top tip, right? But so many people don't naturally gravitate towards doing that. It seems to be a game changer. When people start doing it, it's like put out into the universe what you want to attract. You know, it really does play out.
Yeah, I think it it seems so like obvious, and I think people realize it, but some people aren't willing to put in the work or the time that it takes to go above and beyond what their you know, full-time job is, or whatever, to do the personal work that gets them to where they want to be. So I think there has to be that desire there, but also the desire enough to move and do something with it.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Are there any other standout things where you think it's been particularly formative? Because in asking this question, you know, we've got a bunch of people live today. Many more tend to watch on YouTube and on the replay. Mm-hmm. But I know there's so many letterers and so many creatives out there who are struggling, and you know, they love doing lettering, they love doing this kind of work, but they're just not really getting any kind of traction. And I think they are always really impressed by people like you, but equally there's like a bit of a disconnect where they just think like, how do I get from where I am to there? Right. Beyond just hard work, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I used to be there. Like, I used to have those same thoughts. And I mean, it's hard to say like exactly, but I think like back when I was like years ago, when I was feeling that way, I was thinking like, why isn't any of my work getting recognized? Like, I would post something to Dribble and I wouldn't get very many likes or any of that. And I'm like, isn't it good enough? Like, isn't it like, why don't people see it and like it? And now looking back, I'm like, no, like it wasn't good enough. I thought it was at the time, but it wasn't. And that's why, because it just didn't look that good. It didn't look good enough to catch the eye of a lot of people. And so I know that's like, it's like hard to think about in your work, like feeling like it's not good enough. But I think that it's always important to strive to improve, to take workshops like from people who are the best, and to try to get your work up to par where it actually is good enough. You're posting something and it starts getting traction because it looks good. If something's not getting traction, it's probably because it's not up to par. Even though
I love that. Hard truths. Hard truths coming here from Becca.
Yeah, I guess. Keep working.
Yeah, 100%. And I have noticed that myself, and I think most of us probably have. There is a weird thing where you kind of trick yourself into thinking it is good enough now, and then it's only with the benefit of hindsight. And it could even be looking at something from 6 months ago, and you're like, oh wow, I'm actually in a totally different league now because I kept plugging away and improving. So I love that tip. And it's not, you know, you didn't hold any punches, but it's the truth that people need to hear. Like, sometimes it is just about being proactive in your self-improvement and in developing your skills.
Right. I mean, it's just a matter of like continuing to do it, practicing a lot, taking workshops, taking online courses, like always striving to improve. And I think that that's what sets people apart from that, like, I'm struggling in lettering, how can I make a living doing this, to the people who are making a living doing it. So like, they didn't give up and they pushed past that place where their work was bad or that it was like mediocre. There's that, I think it is Ira Glass who has a quote. There's like the,
yeah, because we're creative, we have a degree of self-awareness about the quality of our work. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yeah, he talks about the gap, right? Like in his work, exactly. Like radio and interviewing, and he's like, when you start out, you're going to be bad, and for a long time, you're going to be bad. You're going to make a lot of work, and a lot of it's going to be bad. But there comes a point when it stops being bad, and you just have to. I can't remember like the whole. You push past that, you work hard, and you keep doing it, and keep learning, and keep improving, and then your work will start to get exponentially better.
I love that essay. Everyone, Ira Glass, The Gap, go and read it. It's so fundamental for creatives. It was a real mind shifter for me. Becca, I believe we have to call it there, but you've given so much of your time and value today, and we really, really appreciate it.
Good. I'll stop sharing now.
There's been lots of smiling, I think, from everyone all around, and certainly from Matt and myself. Yeah, we're actually, Yeah, awesome, right, Matt?
Yeah, really cool. Yeah.
I want to go make some stop motion now.
Yeah, I think what I find inspirational always is seeing big brands using really creative designers to push their brands forward, and not being afraid, because it is so energetic and so interesting to actually do that. And I find that, really brilliant.
Yeah, so cool. So Becca, you can tell we're out of our normal studio that we've got in our offices today. So normally we've got the whole team around us and we give a round of applause, but today it's going to be Matt and I. But I appreciate you jumping on. That was awesome. Everyone blow up the comments please for Becca, because she's been fantastic today, and there's been so many value bombs dropped within this chat. We really, really appreciate it. But yeah, thanks for being awesome, Becca.
For having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And yeah, we'll definitely get you on the podcast for a longer chat at some point with the gang. But yeah, appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks,
thank you guys.
All right. Take care. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.